皆さん、こんにちは。今日は日本語のことを喋っていましょう。Everyone has a cool intro song, but I just can't seem to think of one. Hi everyone, so today I wanted to discuss my Japanese learning story and where I am so far. Let me first start off by saying that I'm nowhere near fluent in Japanese, and to be honest, while I'm further ahead from where I started, I'm still not where I should be had I studied continuously for the past few years. Nonetheless, I think I've become at least a little bit more disciplined since then, and I hope I can learn more quickly and efficiently now that I have a proper system in place. Anyway, let's begin. The story begins on July 26, 1998, when I gloriously emerged from my mother's— oh shit, sorry, too far back. Ah, there we go. Perfect. This is me in 6th grade. And while I would like to purge all of my memories of middle school, or at the very least place them in the closet of forgotten memories within my mind, one thing I cannot forget is my first anime. Yes, like all other weebs who want to learn Japanese, I wanted to learn Japanese because I enjoyed anime, and I still do. Of course, I'd watched a bit of anime beforehand. I'd watched a few of Miyazaki's works and a bit of DBZ, but I was never really into it. Though, anime gods, forgive me, because I still haven't watched DBZ. Anyway, the first anime I watched was A Megami-sama, or Ah My Goddess. While this series has been questioned recently for its perpetuation of traditional gender roles and stereotypes, it still is a very cute anime. Not to mention, it gives hope to hopeless 5'4" guys like me when it comes to romance. Cries. Anyway, the visuals are wonderful, at least for a 2005 anime. The designs are vibrant and animated, and the development of Keiichi's and Baldandi's relationship was always interesting to follow, considering that this series is probably the big will they or won't they series of anime. Though unlike most other series of this trope, I found that this one maintained a certain innocence and warm-hearted nature to it, but that's a subject for another video. But why did this anime attract me so much? The reason was the extreme contrast I saw between Ah My Goddess and other popular anime such as DBZ or Naruto. I wasn't exposed to many of the varieties of anime at the time, and I was predisposed to think that all anime maintained the story of a classic hero's journey with intense fight scenes and gung-ho adventures. Oh My Goddess, while containing intense scenes and adventures, also contained more mellow, compassionate moments as well. In fact, a lot of the time, these moments were emphasized over the daring adventures of the goddesses. While there were other series that could have exposed me to the various genres of anime, I stumbled upon this one, and I'm quite glad I did, since I found similar anime afterward. And upon adding more anime to my repertoire, which unfortunately is still slightly scanty, I was inspired to learn the language. So I set off to learn. And unfortunately, in middle school, when I decided that I would learn Japanese, I wasn't that good at studying. I was pretty decent at taking classes. Listening to a teacher, writing down their key points, and regurgitating that information isn't too hard for me. Nonetheless, I wasn't taking a class in Japanese, and honestly, I really didn't want to. I'd learned how to play piano on my own at the time, and a year after I started learning, I was already playing difficult pieces like Rachmaninoff, etc. So I think that developed a sense of hubris in me. So I said the words that every Japanese learning weeaboo says to himself or herself at some point: I can learn Japanese just by watching more anime. The constant exposure will allow me to just absorb the language as I continue. Oh boy, was I wrong. But that's not to say that there aren't people who have learned Japanese by watching anime. But those people have spent a lot of time and effort dissecting each and every word in the script and looking at the dictionaries as well. So it's not the same thing as nonchalantly relaxing and watching an anime. And honestly, I don't think I was the type of person to sit there and dissect every single word in an anime script. So really, in middle school, all I really knew was a few simple phrases and words. This brings me to freshman year of high school, though. My high school didn't have a Japanese class as well, so I was still left to study on my own. But I did develop better study skills. You see, one of the courses I took as a freshman was essentially a research seminar. We were given a topic, and we all sat in a circle conversing and debating about said topic. The research I did for that class created the basis for my current study method, and I used it to study Japanese, particularly with the book Japanese from Zero, which is actually a really great primer if you want to start learning the language, but that's for another video, and the internet's most acclaimed Japanese grammar guide, Take Him's Guide to Japanese Grammar, which is actually an amazing site, by the way, and if you want to ever study Japanese, you should use it as a resource. In fact, you could probably just use it alone if you read a bunch of texts and use the grammar guide as a supplement. I read everything from the kana section of the guide to the essential grammar section. And after finishing the essential grammar section, I really felt no need to read any further, which was a huge mistake, by the way, since there are still grammar concepts that I should know by now, but I don't. And when I found that I still wasn't understanding anime after reading through all of that guide, I gave up. There were moments when I suddenly had the motivation to study more Japanese, but those eventually wore off after about a month, and I would give up again. This cycle of studying for a month and then giving up for a few more would continue for the next few years. I think one of the things I was missing was practice. I could study grammar as much as I wanted, but if I didn't practice, I wouldn't retain anything. I learned that after taking a compulsory Spanish course, and I was actually quite good at Spanish. Alas, I've forgotten most of it, almost all of it, due to lack of practice and exposure. Nonetheless, I knew I had to practice. But I only had the first book of Japanese from zero, and Take Him's Grammar Guide didn't really have any exercise to practice with. Not to mention that I had no friends who could speak Japanese, and even if I did, I still didn't know enough vocabulary to understand conversations. To be honest, it's still quite difficult for me to converse, but I'm better than I was before. With that in mind, though, I began looking for a relatively cheap textbook that would fulfill my needs of sufficient vocabulary and practice, though I didn't want to buy a workbook. I also wanted something that was comprehensive enough for an introductory Japanese course, but concise enough to fit in one volume. I found what I was looking for in the book Japanese for Everyone by Nagara Susumu. I'm surprised it's not as popular in the Japanese language learning community, considering that it covers 2,500 vocabulary words, 450 kanji, and contains all of the topics in Genki in one volume. And if you don't know what Genki is pretty much the most popular Japanese textbook, and it spans 2 volumes and it has 2 workbooks, and it only covers around 300-something kanji. So I'm surprised Japanese for Everyone isn't as popular, but I suppose it is what it is. Anyway, it was a pretty good book in my opinion, and I'm still using it, so it is a pretty good book. And I actually find myself enjoying the exercises, though it still is a textbook, so it's boring anyway, but I do find myself enjoying the exercises every now and then. Now, I know some of you will say that textbooks aren't the way to learn a language, and I agree with you to a certain extent. A language should be learned with practice and exposure, which is why I'm really interested in using the shadowing method to augment my Japanese studies, but more on that in a different video. I'll probably put a link on the shadowing method in an annotation here or in the doobly-doo below. Nonetheless, despite my lackluster study skills as a middle schooler, I actually do like textbooks. They're a nice compendium of information gathered into one book, so I don't have to search throughout the whole internet for information. In the realm of language learning, textbooks are tools for one to use, and they're particularly useful, in my opinion, for left-brained people and people who like to see the details first and then build them up. Language textbooks are very good at doing that. They start off with a few grammar concepts, build them up, and integrate them at the end of every chapter. Dissecting each grammar point and then integrating them all together facilitates my learning of the language, and it also helps me to retain it. Despite all of the benefits of textbooks, I understand that I need to do more to learn a language, and that's why I plan on using the shadowing method to augment my practice. It would increase my exposure to the language and solidify phrases, words, and speech patterns. Though I must confess, I really haven't been shadowing at all recently, but I hope to get to it soon. With all this information, this leaves 2 final questions. Where am I now, and where do I go from here? Currently, I'm on chapter 12 out of 27 in Japanese for Everyone, and I'm learning quite a bit from the book. It's very exercise-centric, and it's focused on putting you into normal, everyday situations, unlike many grammar books which just focus on sentence structure. Conversation-wise, I'm still quite lacking, though I do find myself reading better, despite my lack of kanji knowledge. I've resolved to myself that I can't really learn kanji in a contrived manner, and it would be better for me to learn them as I expose myself to them. The more often I see a kanji while reading, the more likely I am to memorize it. And I suppose the point is that I must continuously expose myself to the language to get results, and I've been exposing myself to the language every single day for the past month or two, when I finally decided to get back to learning Japanese. Now, you can also constantly expose yourself through contrived systems like SRS, but once again, those are contrived, and they don't seem very fun to me. I'd rather expose myself to material that I like to learn the language. Anyway, I gave myself a goal. I'm going to take a Japanese placement exam at the university that I'm going to transfer to in the fall. The goal is to finish Japanese for everyone by the time that test comes, so I can at least take it with some knowledge of Japanese grammar. Anyway, we'll see how it goes from there. If I don't pass out of the introductory Japanese courses, I'll still take classes anyway, whether I pass or not, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot from those too. Anyway, we'll see how it goes from there. If I don't pass out of the introductory Japanese courses, I'll still take classes anyway, whether I pass or not, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot from those too. And I look forward to learning more, and I'm confident that my goal to learn Japanese will be reached. And with that, thanks for listening, everyone.